Welcome back to building a tracker app on Reels, guys. Today what we're going to do is we're going to be making the function in our view model for this button that we made earlier. So just to kind of recap, what this function is going to do is it's going to be taking in an instance of the tab model as a parameter, and then it's going to be adding the increment value to the main value for that instance. So to declare it, all I'm going to do is func increment, which is the name of the function, and then in parentheses, I'm going to be adding the name of the parameter, which I'm setting as tab model, and then it's going to have a type, which is also tab model in this case. But you can see the type is in green and then the name is in blue. And so again, what this is going to do is just house the code to update the correct tab model instance. And that's going to be the one that the user is on. So again, what we're trying to accomplish is that once the user taps the screen, the increment is added to the main value. And I'm just reiterating this a lot because the upcoming code, I don't want it to be confusing. So just be sure you know what we're trying to do, and then we're going to jump into how to code it in the next reel. Happy coding! Hey guys, so for part 36 of building an app entirely on Reels/Shorts, I'm going to be making this increment function that we introduced last time. So the first thing I realized is that I declared this function outside of the class for the view model itself, and so it should be inside. So let me just fix that really quick. And then for the code, what I'm going to do is use an if let, and then I'm going to say if let index is equal to tab model array, which is the name of the app published array that we have, dot first index, and then of tab model, which is the parameter that I have. And so if this index exists, which it always should, then the code inside will execute. But if it doesn't, then the code in the else section will execute. And this is just the basics of how an if-let statement works, and we're going to be diving deeper into it in the next reel. Happy coding! Hey guys, and welcome back to building an entire app on Reels/Shorts. Today we're going to be finishing this increment function in our view model, and all we have left to do is just say tab model array, which is again the app published array in our view model, and we're going to be using the index that we got, and then dot main value plus equals, and then the same notation with dot increment. And this plus equals is basically a fancy way of saying that the main value is equal to the main value plus the increment. And so just to take a step back, this is going to be called from the for each loop in our home screen view. And the tab that the user is on is the tab in the for each loop. And we're going to pass this tab into this function. And so the if let part is going to see which index that tab is on. And then for that index, it's going to be adding the increment value to the main value. And this else should never actually execute because it shouldn't be needed. We should always find the index because we're just dealing with one array. And so if it does though, I'm just going to add a print error never should happen just so that we can see in our console when testing if something is wrong. Happy coding! Welcome back, peeps, to part 39 of building an app entirely from scratch. Today we're going to be taking the increment function that we've built over the last couple of reels in our view model and actually be using it in our code. So to do that, I'm going to head over to the home screen view, and then inside the logic part for the button in our for each loop, I'm going to be accessing that function through the view model using vm.increment, and then for the parameter, I'm going to pass in the current tab that we're on. And after that, I'm just going to let it load. And so I only make these reels about 5 reels in advance or something. And so as I was recording, I realized that we have an issue. So it loads, and at first it seems like it's working too. But if you click any of the subsequent pages except the first one, although it does add the increment value, it returns to the first page. And so this is definitely an error. It's not something that we can just leave as is. And so I'm going to be debugging this off camera, and then in the next reel, I'm going to get back with what was wrong. Happy coding! Hey guys, and welcome to part 40 of building an app entirely from scratch. So last reel we ran into an issue where if we try to update the value of any subsequent pages except the first, it jumps back to the first page. And I left this issue in because debugging is a huge part of coding, and so I don't want to cut out all the mistakes from this series, and instead I'm just leaving them in so that it helps everybody learn along the way. So to debug this, I did some things, one of which was check if the tab screen view was causing an issue, which it wasn't. I also went back to the function and I tried just updating one of the pages, and basically what I realized is the issue is in using this tab from the for each loop, because what we're doing is we're taking that tab, we're passing it in as a parameter, and then we're updating that tab. But for some reason, the way SwiftUI is working, when we update that tab, it's no longer able to show it. And so it jumps back to the first tab. And I found a way to fix this, which I'm going to be implementing in the next reel. But once we know the issue, it's not too hard to fix. And so it should be pretty okay from here. Hey guys, and welcome back to part 41 of building our app. So last video I talked about how I came up with a solution for a problem that we were debugging, and I have it right here. And if I just paste it in, it's not a huge change, but what it does basically is instead of looping on the array from the view model itself, it loops on the indices, which basically means the indexes. And what this does is that instead of having a tab, we now have tab index. And whenever we want to access something from our array, we can do it using vm.tab_model_array, and then in the brackets have that tab index. And so I replaced everywhere that we had tab before with this new phrase. So what this is doing basically is that instead of relying on the array itself, because it's only relying on the indices, the for loop is no longer dependent on the array as much as it was before. And so when we update something from that array, even if we're on it, the for loop doesn't care as much, and so this fixes the problem that we were having previously. Happy coding! How can we avoid the white flash that comes with a button in SwiftUI? So I'm currently making this app, and as you can see, this white flash doesn't really look that good on the screen. And so to solve that, what I'm going to do is take my button and I'm going to embed it into a Z-stack. And what I'm going to do then is a Z-stack basically lays things from back to front. And so for the label, I'm going to take that tab screen completely out of it, and I'm going to replace that with just a rectangle. And you can see how it covers up most of the screen. I'm going to be adding a .ignore safe area onto it. And after that, I'm just going to be making it a foreground color of clear. And so what this means is that the button is actually technically on top of the UI component that we're seeing of tap screen, and it's clear. So when we touch it, that white flash is just not going to come up. And now, as you can see, it looks a lot cleaner than before. Happy coding! How can we use .ignore safe area in SwiftUI? So we currently have a .ignore safe area on our entire tab view, and we also added it to the button that we added last time. But the reason that we have it on the tab view is because we want the UI components to extend into the safe area to give it a more clean look. But if we change the bold on the preview at the bottom, then it'll actually show us the frames. And frames are really important to understand how things are laid out in SwiftUI. And so if we see the frame of the Z-stack, it's not actually going into the safe area. So even though we added it to the button inside of the Z-stack, that's not really going to make a difference. And so I'm just going to be removing that modifier since we didn't actually need it. Happy coding! What are SF symbols in SwiftUI? Well, the reason I'm asking that is because today I'm going to be starting to add a settings button into my app, and for that I'm going to be using an SF symbol. So an SF symbol is basically a vector icon that Apple gives us that we can use in our code, and it scales very neatly and just works very fluently in SwiftUI. And so to see which ones we can pick from, there's actually an SF symbol app that you can download online, and using that you can just search for whatever you want and it'll give you the available options. And to use it in our code, all you have to do is image, system name, and then type in the exact name of the shape that you want. And I'm just going to be adding a font of large title, and you can kind of see it on the screen right there, but we're going to be adding more modifiers later to make it more clear. Happy coding! Hey guys, if you want to learn more about how to align frames in SwiftUI, you're in the right place. So today what I'm going to do is add an alignment onto my Z-stack. And it's a top trailing alignment, which basically means that I want the things inside the Z-stack to be aligned at the top, and then trailing means towards the right side. And the reason this isn't affecting anything else is because their frame sizes are basically the same as the entire screen, but it is going to impact this small settings button because it's so small. And also what I'm going to do is change the modifiers so that we can see that a bit more clearly. But the issue that I'm having is that pressing it versus pressing the screen is very hard to differentiate. And we're going to be working on how to solve that in the next reel. Stay tuned. How can we make a small UI element more clickable in SwiftUI? So what I'm going to do for this is add a rounded rectangle, and I'm going to give it a frame to make it a square of 70, and I'm going to be using a dot overlay. And a dot overlay basically means that we want the thing inside the overlay to be on top of the other thing, which in this case is the rounded rectangle. And so I'm going to be adding that image code that I had before, and I also have an alignment of dot top on the overlay so that it's near the top. And so as you can see now, the area to click the button is a lot more. But you may be wondering what we're going to do with this blue square at the back. And to avoid that, I'm just going to choose a foreground color of color.clear. And so now we can tap the settings icon on more easily, and it's less likely that if someone is trying to tap the settings, they're going to be tapping the screen instead. So it's invisible, but it's a lot more functional. Happy coding! Hey guys, what's up? Today's video is going to be super simple. We made the settings icon last time, and it's conflicting when the text is kind of long. And so to avoid that, what I'm going to do is go into our tab screen view, and we don't have a baseline offset in this text, but I'm going to add one, and I'm going to put in a value of -20 just to move it down a little bit. And now if we go back, we can see that the settings icon is no longer interfering with that text. Happy? How can we add a sheet in SwiftUI? Well, the first thing we need to do is declare an @state var at the top, and it's going to be of type bool, and I'm going to be adding a starting value of false. Then inside our button to control the sheet, I'm just going to be using the name of the variable .toggle, which just changes it from false to true or true to false, depending on what the value is. Then anywhere in our code, we're going to be adding a .sheet modifier. And it's going to be asking for that variable that we made at the top, and we're just going to bind that with the $, and then we can have anything inside. And once we're done, you can see if we click that button, now a sheet is going to be coming up. And you've probably seen this across other apps too, and it's very simple to add. Happy coding! How can we use extensions to organize our code in SwiftUI? Well, as you can see right now, our body has a lot of code inside it, and it doesn't look super clean. So what I'm going to do is add an extension, and then the name of the view that I'm working in, which is home screen in this case. And then I'm just going to type in private var, the name of this var variable that's going to hold this code, and then some view. And I'm just going to paste that code inside. And now in my body, all I have to do is reference the name of this new variable, which I'm calling data, and the code is going to work as it was before. So this is just a way that you can separate out your code to make it look more clean and keep it more organized. Happy coding! How can we simplify our function SwiftUI? So what we have right now is a button which calls a function in our view model, and it passes in an instance of tab model. And from that, we get the index of that instance, and then we use that to increment the value. But since we made some changes to our home screen view, we can now simply just pass in the index itself. And this basically just really simplifies the code because now it's just very easy to update what we want to in just one line. And then back on our home screen, all we have to do is change in what we're passing, and after that, we're done. So this just removes some unnecessary code, and that's always just a good practice to make sure our code is as simple and as readable as possible. Happy coding! How can we make a new file in SwiftUI? So today what we need to do is create the settings page file. And for that, I'm going to right click any of my files and go to new file. And after that, I'm going to be choosing a SwiftUI view because I want this file to have the preview and the view components. And I'm going to be naming it settings page. After that, I'll click done. And as you can see, our file has been created. Now we made a sheet last time, and I want this sheet to show the contents of this new file. And so I'll just put its name there. And then as you can see, we get that hello world because that's all we have in the file right now, but we're going to be really changing that up over the next couple of reels. Happy coding!